This is Obal, and I'm going to go over some more builds and just general things you want to do and bring to Fractals. I'm going to be putting out a Fractal guide like I did with my Guardian guides, but from a Warrior's perspective. And I don't have any build videos up or anything, so I figured I'd make one. This is just mostly directed towards Fractals, but you can use it for dungeons and PV as well. It's just the meta build. As well as another build that another warrior in our group uses for more support for the group. And if you get one thing out of this at least, it's that Greatsword Axe Mace is pretty terrible for Fractals. You'll just be doing this and the boss will walk right away from you, or Trash will just destroy you and your group. You should be just doing this and this instead. It's a lot better. I usually just run the standard 30, 25, 0, 0, 15 meta build. And you just want to always have on dual wielding and Berserker's power. Slashing power is good, but you won't be running a greatsword much. You want to use it when you are using a greatsword. When you're not, you want to run Axe Mastery. And Rending Strike should always be on. And Forceful Greatsword, again, if you're not using your greatsword, which you won't be for the most part, you want to run Deep Strike. It's okay, it's just, it gives you 40 precision for each signet you have on that you haven't used. You'll pretty much always be running Signet Fury, Healing Signet, unless you have two banners on. There's really not much else you can run that's worthwhile there. It just gets you to your 10% damage multiplier. And for discipline, you want, I usually just run Warrior Sprint, it's pretty good. There's really nothing else that's great. You get to use Signet Mastery, but again, you should have Battle Standard on for the majority of Fractals. So much can go wrong, plus is just 1-2 shot everybody. Trash hits really hard. It's best to just keep Battle Standard on. This is the other build that we run. It's a great alternative to the meta build. If you hate meta builds for some reason, or you want a more supportive build to offer your group more DPS, or if you're plugging, this is the way to go instead of other weird builds. The NEA build. Power Allies gives 150 power to everybody around you. You lose out on your 10% multiplier. And Fast Hands. Fast Hands really isn't that great for Fractals since you won't be using your Greatsword very often. So the only thing you're really going to be losing is a little bit of your personal damage to give everybody more damage. So the trade-off's worth it. You also want to run Inspiring Banners, especially if you're pugging mostly. You want Battle Standard more often to revive people more often. You might have bow bears in your group, or pugs can just tend to be all over the place, so you get 50% more range on your banners. If you're running in more of an organized group that'll be sticking together and not dying as much, you can just run Empowered for more damage for yourself. It's a good choice if that's the case. And you'll have Rending Strikes, great trait. Warriors bring the phone. That's what they do, you want that. You'll have dual wielding. You'll have Axe Mastery, which you should change to slashing power for the times that you run a greatsword, which isn't often. You have Berserker's power. And this is the variation we use for Fractals. Since you'll be spamming Warhorn 4, people will be using Scale Venom. Odds are the enemies and the bosses will have weakness on them for the most part. So it does more damage than anywhere else you could put the points. If you're just doing general PV or dungeons, you'll want to put this 10 in Discipline instead, like he suggested in his build guide. For NEA support build to get Signet Mastery. But you're doing Fractals and you should mostly have Battle Standard. So I would just go with this trade allocation for fractals. For gear, you want all berserker gear. There's really no point to run knights gear, soldiers, or anything tanky. Since you're warrior, you have such a large health pool, a lot of armor. It's the most forgiving class. You have weapon evade as well. Unlike other classes, you will not get one-shotted by attacks that would kill pretty much every other class in one hit. So there's really no point to running anything but berserker gear, even if you're new. Berserker gear is the way to go for a warrior. And for runes you want scholar. For sigils you want, for the daytime you want battle and force. And if you do nighttime content you want night and force. Also for harder bosses where you will have problems keeping enough endurance up for dodging, I would suggest getting a sword with energy in it. For your weapon swaps against all trash, you'll want to run Axe Warhorn, Axe Mace. Generally in Fractals you want to be mitigating damage done to your group. Other classes have things like blinds and reflections. You have weakness from your Warhorn. You want to utilize that instead of pressing 2, using 100 plays and losing. So hopefully your group will be line of sighting or grouping up mobs with pulls and such. Once you start seeing a few group up, you'll want to use Tremor. So you want to start off in Axe Mace. And once you do that, you want to swap immediately to Warhorn. Use Call to Arms, put up weakness on them. It's a bit different for bosses. You want to run a whole bunch of different things depending on the situation. You just want to run the standard Axe Mace Greatsword for very easy bosses and ones where you'll need a CC like Raving Asuras, Golems, and Rampaging Ice Elemental. It's great to have there. I'm going to keep in mind you want to use this for easy things that you can get hit multiple times and not die. So things for like champ rooms and the 2 bosses that I said, it would be the optimal choice. For bosses that hit hard and don't really move around a lot, and you don't really need CCs at all, you'll want to run Axe Sword, Greatsword. You'll have 2 blocks with your Sword 5 and Greatsword. You can add Energy Sigil to your swords as well to get even more dodges, since some bosses do attack fairly quickly and it's hard to keep up like Arch Diviner. And again, this is for bosses that hit hard, that don't move around a lot. Things like the first Arch Diviner fight, Imbued Shaman, Dredge Power Suit, those kinds of things. For bosses that hit hard and move around a lot, like Mossman and Mitrin, you want more mobility, and Greatsword kind of sucks for that. So you want Axe Sword, Axe Warhorn. This will give your group more mobility as well as you. And it'll give people more dodges as well because you can give them vigor half the time. And you want to keep swiftness up. And you want to keep the target crippled. Because generally for these types of bosses you'll want to figure out who has aggro of the target. And you want that person to walk backwards and try to max melee the target so they won't auto attack them, while everybody else just follows behind the boss and attacks them from behind safely. You also want a longbow for using a fire field and stacking might before fights, or if you need to range things it's better to use than a rifle. And if you're in a pug or if you're in a group where they don't have fire fields or they want you to use them, you can just activate your Signet of Fury, use your Burst, Bow 3, Banner, Banner 5, use Warhorn 5 if you don't really need it for trash. I mean, you have 12 might stacks. Then after all that you want to swap back to your normal weapon. If you're at a boss, grab your banner and go. As far as utilities go, this should be your bar for the most part. At least if you have multiple warriors in the group. If you have multiple warriors in the group, you'll want to swap to either banner, strength, or discipline, depending on what the other warrior is running. If you have 3 in your group for some reason, should go with Signet of Might if the other two banners are covered. If you're the only warrior in the group, congratulations, you're banner bitch. You get to bring both banners, strength and discipline. You even get a third one for Fractals battle standard. Should be your elite for the most part. It's well worth it. And for great justice as well. Should pretty much always be on your bar. As far as healing skills go, you want Healing Signet for pretty much everything. With the exception if you know you're going to take damage, it's unavoidable. And it's going to hit really hard at a time. Like if there's a huge mob like at the Molten Facility Fractal after the tunnels, or if you need to tank things like if you want to be the tank for Old Tom and eat up the spinning attack for a time, or you're doing the dredge panels and you have to stand on the switches. Defiant Stance is well worth using there for those types of things. But generally you want to stick with Healing Signet. And besides for Great Justice and the banners, they're pain again. Things like I said with Defiant Stance and Durfane's good for using too. And Balance Stance if you need stability for anything. Like if you fight Aether Blades stacking up on the wall, you want it there. Or Snowblind if you don't really have much stability with your group. And you could also use Berserker Stance for skipping past the Harpies. Shake It Off if your group really has no condition removal because you're pugging or something. Fear Me is good to use for things like Stab the Fire event for Snowblind. So as Subject 6 if when the oozes start coming, you can just fear them away so you can burst down Subject 6. Seeing the Might's good to use if you don't need two banners and you're fighting doors and stuff. Really nothing else. It's also good to use because your attacks are unblockable for Subject 6. As long as he has no Defiant and it goes in shield form, you can use Signet of Might and Tremor it and cancel it. Signet of Fury if you don't have two banners to take. And Bolus Charge is great for running in the reactor room. Throw Bolus for the Shaman's not a bad idea to keep him in the same spot while he's bubbled. And you can use Kick to kick the Molten Protector guy at the weapon test area if you really need to. You can't trust pugs or something. It's not a bad thing to put on. For consumables, you want Scale Venom. It's really the best thing to have because it inflicts weakness and vulnerability. Weakness is something you really want to have all the time on your enemies and fractals since they hit really hard to mitigate the damage for your team. And there's an event chain that starts and marches around this waypoint here. So it suggests getting a few stacks of that. Since it only really lasts 10 minutes, it's not very long, you'll keep on having to use them throughout the fractal. And for food, the most optimal thing is bowls of sweet and spicy butternut squash soup. But you're doing fractals, so you don't really get much out of it, so you'll probably be poor like me. Not even a gold, so you can use things like Minotaur steaks or candy dragon rolls or steak and asparagus. They're pretty cheap and it's good enough. I'll be uploading Fractal Warrior guides for each fractal gradually to my channel, and I took in some things into consideration while making them to make them better guides for people. You're a warrior, you can't do things to make things face roll other than apply a weakness like put up reflex for your group and such. And I realize not everybody's going to have an optimized group and an optimized team. and these are the comments that I usually get. So I made it very pug friendly. I'll go over what you should bring if you're in an organized group, and if you're not, if you're just pugging. And I'll go over advanced tactics that you would do if you had something like a mesmer in the group. But like I said, I'm doing it very differently, and so people will learn more and get a lot more out of it. Not secretive on the forum about it, but I'll go ahead and tell you now. We did it with 5 warriors for every fractal, except very few things. We had an honorary warrior for obvious reasons. So I hope you enjoy this video and those crazy videos that we put out for guides. I'd like to take the time to thank everybody who helped me make those guides. It took a lot of effort and dedication to make clean runs, to make good videos for everybody to watch and learn from. So thanks to everybody in my guild that helped out with that. And I'll just use Bark Form 2.5, and I'll see you next time. I'm out.